The City of Tshwane is negotiating with the Auditor General to avoid a qualified audit, and this is the main reason why we are here today. Well, the Democratic Alliance is in possession. We are in possession of a copy of the 30th November 2015 version of the Auditor General's management letter to the City of Tshwane, Tshwane's leadership, as well as a copy of the audited financial statement of the city upon which it was based. Now, this management letter is a damning indictment of the financial state of the city. It is not clear on what basis the city can avoid a disqualification, or a qualification rather, if not an actual disclaimer by the Auditor General. Now, another one is the irregular expenditure of about 4 billion rand, which is the highest ever. Now, according to the Auditor General's findings, the letter states that the city has incurred the stupendous sum of 4 billion rand in irregular expenditure, of which only 1.2 billion rand has been disclosed in the audited financial statements. The balance thereof being discovered during an audit. This is the highest sum of irregular expenditure ever incurred by a metro anywhere in South Africa. This means that 1/6 of the city's operating budget is spent on contracts illegally entered into, indicating that the pervasiveness of corruption, lack of internal control, and effective leadership throughout the city's administration is something that is of serious concern. In addition, the management letter fails to deal with the recovery of at least 400 million of previous irregular expenditures in the previous financial year, including the collection of payments of irregular expenditure incurred in respect of illegal ward committee elections, and remuneration paid in an approximate amount of 72 million rands from the mayor, the municipal manager, the head of secretariat in the speaker's office, and councillors who voted in favor of the illegal measure. In this regard, we notice with great concern the Auditor General's failure to comment on note 50 at page 118 of the audited financial statements, to the effect that irregular expenditure in respect of the ward committee elections were condoned by council. We expect the Auditor General to know and understand that in terms of Section 32 of the Municipal Finance Management Act, irregular expenditure can never be condoned, and that a council always remain legally obliged to recover that money. The PU contract awarded to council and or official of the city. This is one of the findings by the Auditor General. Now, the Auditor General review of the PU contract has found that 27 billion contract to be 2.7 billion, is it 27 billion rand contract to be contracted illegally, entered into, and the expenses therefore irregular. The reason for the findings, amongst others, that it was contracted awarded to a councillor or an official of the city, without naming the person or persons involved. This findings means that the Auditor General has found evidence in his audit that there was essentially a front for a councillor or an official of the city. It also confirms the National Treasury's and the Minister of Finance correspondence with the municipal manager and the mayor, where they personally indicated that this contract with PEU was entered into was illegal and a breach of the Constitution and the MFMA. The management report was supposed to have been signed by the 31st of December, according to the MFMA, and that hasn't been signed. And up to date, the management report hasn't been signed, even now hasn't been signed. It's of great concern. And then the fact that you have political office bearers trying to negotiate their way out of this report also is something that is very alarming. To say, what is it that they're trying to hide? What is it they're trying to get to be extracted from this report? So those are the issues that are of great concern to us, and this is why we had called this today. We're not really questioning the office of the Auditor General, but we're questioning the process that is busy unfolding.
The thrust of the problem is the 4 billion in irregular expenditure, and that all boils down to the PEU contract, which is an ongoing dispute between the ANC administration and the rest of the residents, effectively. And the Auditor General has identified these payments as irregular, and now they have to classify them as irregular. So the contents of this management report, even though it may be draft, we're aware that it should be there, We've been expecting it for a year. We've been speaking about it in council for a long time. And we've been brushed off by saying there's no irregularity. We've even cancelled this contract on a very friendly basis. But a few months down the line, it is no longer friendly, and so on and so on. So the thrust of this potential qualification seems to be that. And if you look at the management letter, it indicates that they agreed to disclose it as irregular. But it seems that that may not be the case right now because of the consequences of disclosing the expenditure as irregular.
Before we take it further, we must give the current government an opportunity to do what it must do. That year has passed. We have looked at how the Auditor General was going to deal with this issue. We have seen that they have simply accepted a resolution which the ANC have passed in council to exonerate themselves from that debt because they realize they must repay that money. Now 72 billion rand must, in terms of section 32 of the MFMA, be repaid by the political office bearers, the accounting officer, and in terms of section 2 of the Municipal Systems Act Schedule 1, by councillors who voted in favour of an illegal measure. If this amount is recovered from councillors, it means each one of them will have to pay approximately 400,000 rand back to the city to undo this issue. The second issue is when it comes to the Pew contract. We are talking now of in excess of 2.7 billion rand that has already been paid to Pew. If it is found to be irregular, it means that that amount has to be recovered. We will first seek to recover, or the city must first seek to recover it from the party to whom it was paid illegally. That would be Pew. If we are unable to recover from Pew by law, because they don't have the money anymore, then the accounting officer, which is the municipal manager, will come in and he will have to repay that money. Together with the mayor, who was pushing this measure in council. One of the issues that we made of the Pew contract was that on the 30th of May 2013, the mayor stood up in council and he presented the case for Pew when he knew full well that the Minister of Finance had warned him personally and called him into a meeting to tell him, do not go ahead with this contract, you are in breach of the laws, you are breaking the Constitution. Yet he presented to council a few days later that everything was in order when he knew it was not in order. It is a very serious offence to mislead council. By virtue of that, he too would be liable for the repayment of the Pew monies. And so we can go down the line again, because it's an illegal measure. Councillors who voted for this measure will be called upon in their personal capacities to repay the Pew money. This is an extraordinary, huge liability that will come down on the ANC councillors and their caucus. Yes, the DA will be pushing this issue. We will be pushing it right to the hill.
Yeah.
Financial statements and an opinion given by the Auditor General gives assurance to whoever uses the financial statements that the assets and the liabilities and the revenue and the expenditure is correct. And the moment that the Auditor General comes and he says, I am providing you with a qualified opinion, it says that that he's not happy that whatever is presented in these financial statements are true. So now you must remember that when you look at financial institutions such as banks that takes up loans, etc., they use the financial statements to decide whether you can afford to pay back your loan, whether you have sufficient cash resources, etc., etc. So they use the financial statements to understand your viability over the long term. And the moment the Auditor General qualifies your statement, it tells them that this is not correct. There are some misstatements in here. And that places a question mark about basically everything that is happening as far as revenue and expenditure is concerned.
What does it say if your capital city receives a qualified audit? And the point is, the capital city is your capital city. That is where you host the world. That is where you have all your embassies. That is where you have your administration. That is where your executive is based. One would have expected that the ANC would have deployed here their best and their ablest and their smartest to run the city, to showcase to the world how they can govern and run the city. And they have failed in that. So what it says, it underlines the failure of the ANC government.
Tshwane, the third largest metro in the world. There's a lot of development that needs to be done, and the role for local government is infrastructure, development, etc. Now, if you can't raise debt, you can't roll out roads and water and electricity. So it's an extremely serious thing. And if you look at the history of the city's expenditure on capital, it's been declining over the last number of years. It should be going higher. It's actually going down. And it's particularly due to the fact that we were unable to raise sufficient cash flow in the form of our own operating income as well as from long-term borrowings. So it will limit our ability to raise long-term borrowings and will push up the cost of this, which therefore means that we have to service more interest.